Welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I am Henry Liu, and today I am joined by Christian Diadamo. Christian, how you doing?
Doing well. I'm ready to talk some Spider-Man, ready to continue off of our part one from last time.
Excellent. I am as well. We are joined by Porfirio Rangel. Porfirio, how goes?
I'm doing good, Henry. Really excited to talk. Yeah, some Spider-Man here, and yeah, let's keep the good vibes going.
Cool. We are also joined by the man known as Rainier. Rainier, how are you doing?
I am doing amazing, spectacular. Even you like
Yes.
you like what I did there?
Yes, I
Been a
do.
minute. Haven't been here in a while.
Good to have you back, and great timing because we're going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. And this is a movie a lot of people are talking about right now. A lot of people are buzzing about, so we're going to get into it. But first, real quick, the Comic Sauce Podcast is on social media. You can catch us at Comic Sauce Pod on Instagram and Twitter. So today is December 23rd, 2021. Happy holidays. And yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home released about a week ago, and we have all seen it. So we should probably mention that this movie already is a huge, tremendous success. It has the second biggest opening weekend ever, box office wise, second only to Avengers Endgame. The critical response has been very positive, and the fan response to this movie has been incredible, to say the least. So just a huge hit on all fronts. And we're going to get into it, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why. Okay, before we get into the movie itself, thought it might be kind of fun to just go around the room a bit and talk about our experiences watching this movie. You know, the past couple years, folks have largely stayed home and not gone to movie theaters. Spider-Man No Way Home currently is a theatrical only experience, right? You can't stream it. You can't pay a price to watch it on Disney Plus, etc. You have to go to the theaters to watch this right now. We did it. A lot of people around the world did it. So how did it go? What was the movie going experience like? So we've seen it a number of times, actually. And some of us saw it together. And let's see, where do we start? How about you, Rainier? Why don't we start with you? What was your experience watching this movie?
Oh yeah, so I was on an island watching this movie by myself. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we were actually not expecting to be able to watch this movie like opening day. We thought that tickets would be sold out everywhere, and we ended up getting lucky on Thursday, the day before the actual opening. They had opened up a new screening at our local theater, so we were able to catch it real early on. And we had a pretty moderately filled theater, which was surprising. I think they just opened up a ton of shows, so it was perfect. And took the wife and the kids, so it was a family event.
Oh, nice.
And let's see, it was man, I don't know where to start with this movie. Like, it was awesome. There was a lot of cheers, a lot of this movie really went full circle. Like, I think Spider-Man, like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, man, do we even dive into that right away? Like, I mean, like the first Spider-Man, right? Like, that was, like, in my opinion, like the start of like the modern superhero movie. I mean, that broke records at the time, and like a superhero movie like doing that, like that, just that's insane. But now it's like a common occurrence with all of the MCU movies coming out. So having that tied into this movie, like, it seems like it just made everything just come full circle.
Yeah, that's a good point. You could really argue that first Spider-Man really opened the door to all this stuff, right? For sure.
So theater experience you're asking about. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of cheers. There were some tears. Um, but it was a fun movie. Like, I mean, it was a fun movie. We all had a great experience.
Right on. Okay, how about you, Christian? What was your theatrical experience like? Well, first off, how many times have you seen it?
So I saw this movie twice already. And so I saw it once with you guys the first time, Friday night. I think we talked about this last week about getting tickets, and then that was amazing experience. Crowd was cheering, crowd was really into it. A lot of fun. There were a couple moments that maybe I'll wait till we get more into spoiler territory to talk about. Um, and then so I was talking with a friend, and immediately we're like trying to figure out what to do. And immediately I'm like, dude, let's go see Spider-Man. I want to see it again. And I bought tickets like the Saturday after at like I can only get it at like 9:30 at night, you know? Like that was the earliest showing I can get 2 tickets in like a re a reasonable spot in the theater.
Yep.
And same deal pretty much. Not as lively as I think the first time we saw it, but still like a lot of fun and a great experience. It really like this movie does go to show you. It's a great reminder, I think, after everything we've been through, the pandemic, just the joys of going to the theater.
Yeah, here, absolutely. Okay, how about you, Porfirio? How many times have you seen this movie?
So I've seen it 3 times. I saw it,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw it Friday
Nice.
night with you guys. I saw it Sunday afternoon with another friend, and then I saw it Wednesday with my family when I came back here. And to be honest, I think I kind of enjoyed it a little more the second time around, just because the first time, like, I mean, obviously the crowd the first night was just really awesome. There were poppers, people were standing up and cheering and crying, and it was really an awesome experience. But I think I was just way too like looking out for like the Easter eggs, like, is this gonna happen? Is that gonna happen? So I think I kind of like ruined the experience for myself. So then when I watched it on Sunday, since I had already seen it, I knew it was gonna happen. I just like sat back and enjoyed the movie for how it was.
Cool. Okay. Oh, you're the winner, Porfirio. You've seen it 3 times. I've seen it twice, and I also had a very positive experience at the movie theaters. I saw it on opening Thursday and Friday night with you guys, Porfirio and Christian. Yeah, that Friday night show was fun. Very rowdy, I would say. The Daly City Century crowd is a rowdy crowd. I think I'm starting to get to know that crowd a little bit now, and they like to make noise. They like to cheer. And Porfirio, you mentioned the poppers. Yes, someone brought party poppers to our viewing, and they were shooting them off like all throughout the show, and it was
I've never heard of
wild.
that before. That's crazy. That's totally next level.
Yeah, next level. First for me too. I was like, what is that? And yeah, they came prepared. And yeah, the moment the screen went black and we realized, okay, the movie's starting, there was, loud cheering from the get-go. And yeah, this crowd was ready to go. And it was a lot of fun. I also want to mention the night before in San Francisco at the Alamo Draft House, because that was a lot of fun too, in kind of a different way. Because at the Alamo Draft House, a big reason why I go is because it's a great experience, great screen, great sound, etc. But there's a kind of a different audience there. It's a film snob kind of audience. So that audience kind of needs to be won over. So when the screen went black and the show started, there wasn't cheering. Like like this crowd, including myself, was just sort of waiting to see, like, okay, let's see how good this is, right? And it wasn't until later when the movie started to pick up some steam and these like really cool moments started to happen, that's when the cheering and the screaming and cheering started to happen. And yeah, by the end it was a madhouse. It was really awesome. And there was just this cool energy, you know, there's this electricity in the air, literally electricity, as we know. But yeah, it was really cool. That was a very memorable night. Yeah, I'll never forget that night. Yeah, like the first time seeing this, just getting absolutely blown away. And we've all been kind of, you know, implying this, but this movie is the reason we go to see movies. This is why we don't stay home and watch movies. This movie just provided everything, thrills and laughs and tears and just everything. Okay, so I think we really need to just dive into the movie now, right? We're ready to go. Huge, tremendous spoiler alert. We are going to get into this movie, so be warned, we're going to go there. There's a lot to be spoiled to in this movie. It's not just like a handful of things. Like there is a lot of stuff in here that you don't want to know about if you haven't seen it, right? So let's get into the movie. Like we always do, maybe we can start by just going over some highlights. What did you like about this movie? I think we all really enjoyed watching this. Let's just go down the list. What was good? What do you guys think? I mean, where to begin, right?
Yeah, where to
Yeah,
begin?
where to
There's so
begin?
much.
Yeah, there is a lot. But yeah, feel free, jump in there. Anyone want to start with some positives on this one?
I'll start. Okay, I'll start, I guess it's square one, which is Spider-Man himself, Tom Holland. And I think that you really get to see Tom Holland as Spider-Man really come to fruition in his film. I really enjoy his arc. I really think they get, even though there's kind of so much in this movie, I think they really like narrow down some of the cast. They cut out a lot of his high school friends in it and really just focus on Peter, Ned, and MJ as your kind of like your core three, as well as really prop up Spider-Man. He has a really great arc where he starts off acting in an almost selfish way, trying to make everyone forget about Peter Parker while not really knowing how to do it and not really knowing how to be Spider-Man. As Doctor Strange tells him, his problem is he's trying to live two lives. And I think through the events of these films, through interacting with all these villains, trying to, I think, rehabilitate the villains in around the midpoint of the movie is really great. It feels very Spider-Man way to
Yeah.
go about things, especially when he doesn't really see how these villains have initially developed and became the villains. And the way the movie ends with him having everybody forget who he is for the greater good of the multiverse, as well as keeping his friends safe, he makes the ultimate sacrifice, like Spider-Man should.
Yeah, wow, great summation there. And I really like what you mentioned about how it stays true to the Spider-Man character. I mean, this is really
Mhm,
what Spider-Man is all about. And,
mhm.
you know, if you did have a problem with the Tom Holland Spider-Man, like some people, including myself, you know, when I first saw Homecoming, I was kind of like, hey, this is this is not really Spider-Man, right? This is not the Peter Parker I know. Um, but you know, at the end of the trilogy, you kind of realize like, well, this it really is Spider-Man. Like, okay, they kind of did a little mix and match with some of the characters and some of the attributes and powers and stuff. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it really is a pretty classic Spider-Man story, right? It really is, the heart of Spider-Man is really here, definitely.
Mhm.
What else? What else was good?
I'm gonna agree with Christian on that. Like seeing Tom Holland's Peter Parker like find his arc, like because when we were introduced to Spider-Man, like we just dove completely in, no backstory. I think the assumption is that like everyone knows how Spider-Man came to be. He just jumped right into the scene, and I think this finally took some time to like because he never had that moment. He never had that Uncle Ben moment, and of course it wasn't Uncle Ben, right? It was Aunt May. Um, but lots of highlights here. I think this movie too is I think it's more than just Tom Holland's Spider-Man, because there's a whole host of characters in this movie that was a surprise to see.
Yep.
How high out of your seat did you guys jump when you guys saw Matt Murdock's cane? That's the first thing you see.
Yeah.
That was a pretty big highlight for me.
Yeah.
Like this, like this confirms that like Daredevil, the Defenders are in the MCU. I know we've heard of them like in passing or in conversation, but having him on screen, like, oh man, how cool is that? And to be his lawyer, of all things, like it just fit perfectly.
Yeah.
Another big highlight for me was Ned bringing his Filipino culture into this film. It was cool.
Oh yeah.
They were in his house. It was awesome seeing his Lola speaking Tagalog. I didn't need any subtitles to understand what she was saying. Super cool.
That's
And
great.
of course, like Andrew Garfield popping in, Tobey Maguire popping in. I mean, I feel like every I don't know, every age bucket or generation has their Spider-Man that they relate to. And I think this just fused everything together. And going back to what I had said earlier, that like it just brought everything back full circle with Tobey Maguire coming in. It just goes to show that there's so much more Spider-Man stories to tell, and that you don't necessarily have to have that one definitive storyline to make or break your character, as long as it catches the essence of like what the character is. With creative storytelling, like you could tell a great story.
Amen to that. Yeah. So many awesome moments. Yeah. And a lot of this stuff could have been like wedged in fan service type moments, but they were done so thoughtfully, like bringing in Matt Murdock into the MCU. They could have done it in kind of a cheesy way, but the way they did it here was cool. Peter Parker needed a lawyer, and then boom, it's Matt Murdock, right?
Like it was just enough, like it was just
Yeah,
enough.
Just enough. It's perfect.
Mhm.
And then the way they revealed Andrew Garfield, so cool. Like you see him in the background of this portal, right? And he's kind of in the shadows, and you're like, wait a minute, you can't really tell at first, right? And they tease you a little bit. He jumps through and you see the suit, you're like, holy shit. Then he takes the mask off. It was so perfect. And then same thing with Tobey Maguire, they did a little portal reveal for him also. And it's just the moments are done so well, and you just gotta appreciate that. We can get into this, but there was a lot of fan service in the movie. Maybe too much. I don't know. We can debate that a little bit. But some of the biggest reveals, I think, were just done very gracefully and thoughtfully. So
I didn't even mention Doctor Strange, only because that was a given.
yeah. Doctor Strange. There are a ton of characters in the movie. A lot of villains, and this movie could have really gone. It really could have gone off the rails. I don't really think it did amazingly, but a lot of characters, just a lot of stuff in the movie.
I think one of the things too that it really captured was it kind of married Have you guys read the I think it's called One Last Day? I think that's the storyline.
Oh, One More Day.
Or One More Day, yeah. I think it kind of
Yeah.
married that and then like the Spider-Verse films, and like it just married it together and then tying it all with the MCU. Oh,
Yeah, a little
and,
bit.
and the Miles Morales like subtle call out. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that last time. We were thinking, they're probably not going to introduce Miles here, but wouldn't it be cool if there's like a subtle reference? And that's exactly what they gave us. So, really cool moment. What about you, Porfirio? Anything you want to call out as a positive for this movie?
I mean, like both you and Rainier already said it, but like Daredevil, Matt Murdock, I jumped from my seat when I saw that. I mean, like it was just so funny because I think like the week before, Kevin Feige said like, oh yeah, um, that Charlie's gonna come back as Matt Murdock, and I don't know. I think he was trying to do it so like people wouldn't think like, oh, they're gonna do it too soon with No Way Home. And so yeah, when it happened, I was just like, oh my god, it was really awesome. And um yeah, he wasn't in it that long, which was awesome. And yeah, there's so many other great moments. Toby and Andrew being back into the series, the villains each kind of having their own moment, and kind of like the explanation, I guess, like of each villain and like their connection to their own universe. I thought that was really cool. It just kind of had like a lot of nostalgia to me. Like, oh, when he was talking about like Doc Ock's movie, I was like, oh, okay, I remember when I first saw Spider-Man 2, or when like Electro was talking about like his journey. I was like, I remember when I watched Amazing Spider-Man 2. Like it just brought back a like a nostalgia triggering moments. Um and yeah, like there's just a lot of great elements that just make Spider-Man who he is, and the story just kind of told that story.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, you mentioned nostalgia, Porfirio. This movie has a lot of nostalgia in it, and it's wild. The MCU is really honing its ability to craft these awesome fan service types moments, but never before has it really tapped into this nostalgic fan service, right? So like Avengers Endgame, awesome. Like MCU fans, it's just this tremendous treat, right? But it was all like fairly recent callbacks, right? I mean, the MCU has only been around since 2008, right? But with this movie, with Far From Home, you get callbacks way from like nearly or around 20 years ago, right? So you get hit with these geek out moments that are like nostalgic moments also. So it's really something else. It's really something else. Like all the Raimi trilogy stuff. Oh my god, it was just, I got the feels, man. I got emotional watching a lot of this movie. Just little moments like when Tobey Maguire first appears, he kind of does like this awkward little wave. And like that's the wave he does in Spider-Man 1 when he's first introduced as Peter Parker, that awkward teenager, right? Um, and Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina are phenomenal in this movie. Like they brought their A game. These are like older actors now, right? But they like really got into the roles again, like revisiting these roles after all these years, and just hitting home runs with their dialogue. The Yeah, speaking of Alfred Molina, the Doc Ock versus Tom Holland Spider-Man battle on the freeway, it's super awesome, man. Like on one hand, I was getting hit with this wave of nostalgia, like holy shit, it's the Alfred Molina Doc Ock, he's back. And then I'm, on the other hand, there's an awesome action scene going on, right? So just goes along with what I'm saying. Like this movie just kind of throws everything at you. It's throwing nostalgia, like awesome fights, and and laughs. You're just getting everything all at once. It's really
Mhm.
bonkers, but in some crazy way, it just all works really well. Let's see, just some other observations. There's a mirror dimension scene. You talk about bonkers, like, you know, with all that happens in this movie, there's this like pretty extended Doctor Strange mirror dimension scene where Doctor Strange is fighting Spider-Man, which is like super cool in itself. Super trippy, amazing visual effects.
So in that scene, sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt you. So
Yeah.
in that scene, did you guys understand what was happening when Doctor Strange pushed Peter Parker out of his body, and his
Oh.
body was still continuing to react even though his like conscious wasn't in there? Did you guys get that?
No. Okay.
My
I
got it.
Wait, go ahead, Brenier. What do you think?
So my take was like, okay, this is his spidey sense that's taken over, like, because he has no control over it, right? And so his spidey sense is taking over and reacting to what's around him, and that's what's happening. Is that what you guys took away from it?
That's exactly what I think.
It seems so bizarre at first. I'm like, why is that happening? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's what they did.
Christian, you had a thought?
So I didn't actually notice this till the second time, but when Tom Holland's in that kind of astral state, and like Peter, not the I guess Spider-Man body, you actually do see the wiggles around his head.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, it's
what?
very faint. It's like very, it's like kind of like it's hard to miss, but like I did definitely notice it.
Oh, that's cool. Oh,
It
man,
was like the astral version of Peter had like the spidey sense like in the comics going off.
I've only seen it once, so I'll have to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah,
again.
next time you see it, look out for that part.
Oh,
I do
I
also like
guarantee
3
it's there.
times.
It's hard to see, but like I do guarantee it's there.
that's pretty damn cool.
It is crazy though that like Spider-Man beat Doctor Strange with like math, magic versus math. Like,
Right. Another pretty cool aspect of the movie, you know, Spider-Man in the comics, yes, he's a great fighter, got superpowers, but he's a brilliant scientist and mathematician, and he uses both in this movie. So more cool Spider-Man stuff for sure.
speaking of science, did you guys catch that one part where I think they reenacted that Spider-Man meme, the one where they're pointing at each other?
Yes, they
Oh,
did.
yeah.
It's subtle, but they did.
Man,
do it.
these guys are clever. Yeah, I'm glad they threw that in there. Man, they threw there's so much detail in this movie. It's insane.
Yeah.
I really like the statement they made too with the Green Goblin, with William Dafoe's character when he was introduced. I think they made a really bold statement when they first show him and he takes his mask off and he hangs it on that trash bin, and then the next thing you see him doing is he just destroys that mask. And I think that statement being made was like, the Green Goblin you knew, this isn't the Green Goblin you're gonna see.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a really great job. And like ultimately he ended up looking like the way Green Goblin should have looked. I think that was the biggest criticism of that movie. I don't think a lot of people really enjoyed that mech suit version of the Green Goblin. And I think they corrected that with this movie.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about it, but I think this movie corrects a lot of stuff in past Spider-Man movies. But I remember that, I remember when Spider-Man 1 came out, a lot of positivity. People were pretty much okay with the organic web shooters, okay with a lot of stuff. But the one thing was that Green Goblin flight suit, right? And I know a lot of people, including myself, were kind of like, dude, Willem Dafoe, he looks like the Green Goblin. His face is kind of fucked up like that, right? He looks like the Green Goblin from the comics. Like, why cover that up with a mask, right? So they did the right thing here by getting rid of that mask. So good stuff.
The MCU is that powerful. They can correct all of their mistakes.
Yeah. Real quick, speaking of Willem Dafoe, I love that moment where he says, I'm something of a scientist myself. Super great callback to the Raimi trilogy. But you were going to say something, Porfirio?
No, I was just gonna say like, yeah, like the whole sense of like the MCU correcting itself. I think like, like I mean, I think Marvel just does a great job of doing this, of listening to the fans, but there's that whole like dialogue between like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and everybody's Andrew Garfield's just like, oh my gosh, like I'm so lame and everything. And Toby's like, no, you're amazing, just because like a lot of people didn't like his Spider-Man or his Spider-Man movies and stuff. And it's even like kind of like humorized, like when like Tom Holland's like, I'm Spider-Man 1, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2, and then Andrew Garfield Spider-Man 3. And then yeah, it's just so funny, those like subtle hits of like those dialogues that's just like, we know what the fans are thinking, and here it is.
It is
Yeah.
crazy that the MCU has that much clout that they could do that. Like they can right their wrongs now. We were talking about this earlier about how, like Spider-Man 3, I thought was awful. And like the Amazing Spider-Mans, I enjoyed them, but like they're not top of the list for me. But now having watched, No Way Home, it's like, okay, I think I have a newfound appreciation for these movies again. And the same thing done with like Shang-Chi and the imposter Mandarin. Like I went back to watch Iron Man 3 and I'm like, this is actually kind of enjoyable. Like these new movies are now up leveling the old movies and correcting their mistakes. It's so crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah, after seeing No Way Home, not only did I want to see No Way Home again, but I wanted to see every Spider-Man movie again, right? Even the shitty ones, right? It's just insane what they're doing right now over at Marvel Studios. What else? I think we should call out the moment when the three Spider-Mans come together and they like realize they got to work together. And there's these really cool shots of the three of them together, right? Both viewings I went to, just huge applause and cheering when those moments happened. Yeah, and that was prefaced by this really funny moment when they're like talking about how they're not working together well, and Tom Holland's like, okay, I actually have like teamwork experience, like not to brag, but I'm an Avenger. I'm in the Avengers, right?
They're like, what is that, a band?
Right. Tobey Maguire has this great line where he says, oh, that's great. What's that?
Yeah.
So great. And then Andrew Garfield said, is that a band? That's so cool. So awesome. Love that.
Dude, Henry, it's speaking of that awesome scene where like you see all the Spider-Man like kind of swing around the moon and then land in that superhero landing.
Yeah.
Did you or Christian, did you guys ever look at that Brazilian trailer, the one I told you guys about?
Oh, we didn't.
No,
Or I
let's talk
didn't.
let's talk about
Yeah,
that
what
now.
was in it?
Yeah, what was that?
So the Brazilian trailer, it's exactly the second trailer, except how like there's that one scene in the regular trailer where like Tom Holland Spider-Man jumps towards Mysterio, or not Mysterio, Electro, Sandman, and Lizard.
Yeah.
So in the Brazilian trailer, there's a scene where Lizard gets like hit like midair.
Oh, that's by like an invisible force, right?
Yeah, by an invisible kick. By invisible kick.
I saw
And
that.
so in like the American trailer, you don't see that. You just see him jumping. But in this Brazilian trailer, you see him get kicked by something. So like, so obviously when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, it's when Andrew Garfield kicks him in the face,
See?
Huh.
Trailers are lies, man. We know that now. We know that.
Hey, did you guys when Spider-Man was like collecting Doc Ock and Green Goblin and Electro in that cave, did you guys get like a video game vibe from that? Like to me it felt like I was playing a video game at that point. Like, not that that's a bad thing, but did you guys get that feeling? Like he had his
Yeah.
He had like the rogues gallery of villains like in their basement, like trying to figure out what to do with them.
That's his home base, and then
Right.
like you know that's where he goes, and like those are like the collectibles, or
Yeah.
like, do you want to replay this level?
Yeah, you walk
Like-
up to them and you press X and they say some like, you know, pre-script dialogue or something.
Right. You get the achievement unlocked and all that. Yeah, definitely video game vibes for
Mhm.
sure. In a
Yeah.
good way.
The Doc Ock level
Mhm.
on the bridge, the Electro level in the forest,
Yeah.
Indeed. Indeed.
the Green Goblin level later on. This would make a great video game.
Definitely. One other thing I wanted to call out, Andrew Garfield has a great moment in this movie where he saves MJ from certain death, right? And I definitely want to call this out because I said on this podcast 1 episode ago that I guaranteed that this would not happen. And it happened. So rewind a bit. I think Porfirio, you mentioned there was a fan theory that Andrew Garfield would save MJ, thereby kind of redeeming himself for not being able to save Gwen Stacy in Amazing
Mhm.
Spider-Man 2. And I was like, these fan theories are getting really ridiculous. I guarantee that this will not happen. I said the words. And then like watching this movie and seeing it actually happen, my brain exploded basically. I'm like, what the fuck? It actually happened. And I'm happy it did because I like everything about this movie. I was enjoying it all really. But you know, there are a lot of moments in this movie where my mind was blown, but this one definitely. And a little bit more on this. Today, this very day, I did watch Amazing Spider-Man 1 and Amazing Spider-Man 2, both for the first time in a long time. And while I will say neither movie is great and they are heavily flawed films, it's kind of like what we've been saying. Spider-Man Far From Home has elevated the entire franchise, and that movie has made all the past movies more interesting. You know, I found myself pretty engaged with what was going on, and I gotta say, like seeing the Gwen Stacy death scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2 after seeing No Way Home, I got like legit chills. I'm like, whoa, it was more impactful. Crazy, just totally crazy. And yeah, I couldn't believe that they actually did that. And it worked too. It really worked. It really worked well. In a movie where Andrew Garfield is like doesn't have a whole lot of screen time, has never been in the MCU to this point, and he has this moment that is just legitimately awesome. So just crazy stuff going on here for sure.
I want to talk about the Aunt May situation.
Yes, I was thinking of that too. Please go
Yeah.
ahead.
So
Yeah,
one, I didn't see that coming.
me
I don't
neither.
know if you guys saw that coming or not, but I did not see that coming. And going back to what we were saying about like, you know, Tom Holland's like arch, like this is it. And never in the MCU have we heard him, you know, reiterate that line, great power, great responsibility, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting, did you guys catch this how Aunt May said that line? She didn't say with great power comes great responsibility. She said with great power also comes great responsibility. And that really
Mhm.
stuck out to me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they said it that way.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys caught this, or you guys might already know this, but that was the original line, the way it was typed in the comics. You guys know that?
Mhm.
And I was
Didn't
like,
know that.
wow, that's so cool that they brought it with that line and it was Aunt May doing it. I thought it was a fantastic moment. I mean, that was the part where I think the theater was pretty teary eyed. I think everyone had come to love Aunt May.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who could have predicted that. Really shocking. Yeah. Yeah, real quick on that. We were talking about predictions in the last episode, and you know, some speculation about character deaths. We did see MJ like falling in the trailer, and there is speculation about, oh, is MJ gonna die? And I was like, I don't think MJ is gonna die. She's this young beloved actress, the character is beloved. I don't see it happening, and I didn't see it happening because I felt like the Tom Holland movies are more lighthearted than the previous Spider-Man movies, and for that reason, I totally would have never guessed that they would kill off Aunt May, because these are not dark movies. They're arguably comedies, right? Action comedies. So I was blindsided. I
I think the
had
reason
no
why
idea.
I think the reason why we were blindsided is because I think everyone is just under the assumption that it was Uncle Ben that passed, and that story, that part of the story was just never told.
Yeah.
And then they hit us
Yeah.
with this, like, oh, okay, this is a different Spider-Man, and this is a different retelling.
Yeah. And, he's already lost his Uncle Ben. He's lost Tony Stark. There's been loss, right?
Or did he
So-
lose Uncle Ben? I don't think that's ever come up, has it?
It hasn't come up. You've seen the briefcase that has Uncle Ben's initials on it that he takes to Europe and Far From Home. So, and I think someone mentioned at some point, like, oh, he's been through so much already, blah, blah, blah. So there are some hints to it. But Uncle Ben has largely not been mentioned. But really, I think the loss of Tony Stark kind of symbolizes the Uncle Ben loss in other Spider-Man universes, right? So yeah, who would have thought that they would kill off Aunt May, but they did, and that was shocking. And absolutely, I love the great responsibility line, because yes, it is the original Stan Lee line from the comics, and I know the one everyone remembers is with great power comes great responsibility, because it's shorter, and that's the one they said in Spider-Man 1, but that's not what Stan Lee wrote. So I know a lot of hardcore comics fans were like, that's not the original line. Well, now, comic nerds, guess what? They did use the original line in this movie. So again, fixing past wrongs, whatever you want to call it. It's all good.
It's
All
interesting
good.
too. It still plays into Peter Parker's storyline of, like, when we originally see Tobey Maguire, when he's in that wrestling arena, and that guy robs the guy that was supposed to pay Tobey Maguire, and he just lets him go, right?
Yep.
Later to
Mhm.
find out that he's the one that kills Uncle Ben. I feel like they retold that well here, because when we see Tom Holland walk in on Aunt May and Osborn talking, like, he looks like he has mental issues and just needs help, and Tom Holland doesn't see him as a threat, so he does nothing to intervene. He just allows it to sort of happen. And it's interesting how they told that storyline here, echoing what it was like with the Tobey Maguire version.
Yeah, in a crazy way, the Tom Holland trilogy can almost be looked at as a prequel trilogy, right? This is like how Spider-Man became Spider-Man, right? So a lot of like big Spider-Man fans were like, hey, this is not Spider-Man. There's no Uncle Ben. There's no great power, great responsibility. Like MJ is Michelle. Like what is all this, right? With Homecoming. And then a few movies later, like they kind of explained it all, right? Tom Holland does have his great power, great responsibility moment, right? Aunt May says the words, and in this movie, he realizes he does have great responsibility, right? He's not free from that. Like early in the movie, he's like, let's just get him out of my universe and let's move on. Like they're not my responsibility, right?
Mhm.
they might die, but that's not on me. That's on you guys. Like, it has nothing to do with me. They're not even from my universe, right? But he comes to realize, it's not all about himself, right? He has to help others too. And that is such a Spider-Man thing, right? And oh God, it's so great. So great. Okay, so we've gone on and on about all the positives, and there's more. I think there's a lot more, but we don't have all night, right? So let's move on. Is there anything negative? Do you have any problems with this movie? Anybody?
Okay, so for me, I think like, you guys talk about like how like Peter like was like, oh, I'm not accepting responsibility for all these guys, but then when like Doctor Strange's like, oh, we're gonna send them back to their universe where they're gonna like die, and Spider-Man's like, no, there has to be a way to save them. I kind of did get a little annoyed. I was like, why? Like, I don't know. I think I was just thinking like TVA from like Loki, like don't mess with the timeline, or else you're gonna like um create like all these like multiverses that are gonna like mess up and everything.
Yeah.
And um that I think that was like annoying me a little about Peter Parker. But then like when he's like correcting himself and everything, by like towards the end, I was like, oh, this is such a Peter Parker thing to do, like saving other people and helping them, like, like that's such a common, like, I guess, theme within like um the comics, where he's always like saving like that one civilian versus like trying to go and capture the villain, because he's Peter Parker and he helps out everybody.
Yeah, that's a good call out. Peter Parker, the Tom Holland Peter Parker, has a pretty cool story arc here. He does start off kind of irresponsible, and I think it's understandable because he's just a kid. And yeah, he hasn't had that moment yet, right? He hasn't had the big Uncle Ben moment we've seen with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Over the course of the movie, he learns and he realizes what's really important. Now, I do want to bring this up. So I think it's kind of understandable that the young Peter Parker would be like, oh, hey, Dr. Strange, can you like fix this situation I'm in? I kind of understand him asking him that, but I think it's kind of strange that in quotation, strange, that Dr. Strange would be up for doing this. I feel like Doctor Strange acted extremely irresponsibly in this movie. Like, don't you think he's not like this young kid? He's the sorcerer, or I guess I should say the former sorcerer supreme, right? Like, I think he should have really known better. I felt it kind of that it was kind of odd that he played along with this whole scheme.
Yeah, I feel like that. I agree. I feel like that fell really short. Like, I'm still trying to think of like, what incentive does Doctor Strange have, and what was the powerful argument that Peter Parker had to have Doctor Strange agree to like make this huge like worldwide change? Because if you're making everyone forget, if it's on YouTube, like it's going to be removed off of YouTube. Like people, all the print, all the everything that was released in the media, like all that stuff goes away. Like,
yeah.
It's not just people forgetting it, you know what I mean? Like, it changes the world. And
really
like he was
does.
just quick to say yes. Like he didn't really have any objection to it, or if he did, it was really weak.
And the way they executed their plan, where he's like, Doctor Strange is sort of brewing up his spell, and then Peter Parker just like calling out these corrections. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, what about MJ? Oh, what about Aunt May? What about Ned? And like Doctor Strange is sort of like, okay, I'll add that in there. And it was just really sloppy, just really sloppy and unprofessional, I think. So that seemed to be, I don't know, a problem.
How much do you want to bet they're going to correct that mistake in the next Doctor Strange movie by explaining what had happened, even though he doesn't know who Peter Parker is?
Yeah, we'll
Power
see.
of the MCU, man.
Yeah. I know. Oh wait, yeah, go ahead, Christian. Go ahead.
So I think to add on to that, like, you think they wouldn't have talked about the parameters of the spell and like what the spell does before casting the spell.
Like actually having a plan.
Like you think like Doctor Strange would have said, "Are you sure this is gonna happen and this is gonna happen?"
Yeah.
And like you also got to think like, it wouldn't have been that hard just to tell the people you want to tell you're Spider-Man again. Like Ned Leeds was all for Peter being Spider-Man and jumped on right away. Was like, "You're Spider-Man, that's so cool." Like in Homecoming, I don't think that'd be a problem. Like being Spider-Man, and same with MJ. MJ was all for it, and so was Aunt May. And like telling them actually wouldn't have telling them again wouldn't have been that hard of a thing to do,
Yeah.
really,
So-
based on what we've seen, how they reacted before. So uh, why get you kind of wonder why he got such cold feet on the idea in the first place.
Peter's a math whiz scientist, and Doctor Strange is a doctor, for goodness sakes, and they both made the worst mistake.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just like really terrible execution. I mean, just sloppy.
Two of the smartest guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of this spell, the spell that went awry, I think it brings up a lot of plot holes. So, we talk about potential negatives of the movie. Yeah, this got me wondering. So the problem that came up was that the spell kind of backfired because anyone who knows that Peter Parker's Spider-Man in any universe can show up in the MCU universe, right? So that's why we saw Doc Ock and Green Goblin from the Raimi trilogy, also Sandman, and Electro and Lizard from the Garfield movies, right? Now, okay, I get it. Otto Octavius and Norman Osborn know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And I want to give a shout out to Porfirio's cousin. His name's Jesse, right?
Yeah, Jesse. Yeah.
He actually knew that Venom was aware of Peter Parker being Spider-Man also, because I called that out as a plot hole. There is a post-credit scene where Eddie Brock shows up in the MCU universe, and I was thinking, like, why is he here? Like, he doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. But Jesse called out a moment in Venom Let There Be Carnage where they kind of explain it. And for anyone to remember a plot point from that movie, it gets props from me, because I don't remember anything but a lot of CGI nonsense for that movie. So there is an explanation. It's a really far-fetched explanation, but it is an explanation for Venom being in this movie. But there are still plot holes. For example, Electro never knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man until the end of this movie. So why would Max Dillon, aka Electro, enter this world? Like, by the logic of this story, he shouldn't have appeared, right? So I don't know.
Okay, wait. Okay, I'm gonna try to answer this, but
Please.
didn't Electro know who Peter Parker was? Like the name Peter Parker? Because he was pairing up with Green Goblin, and Green Goblin knew who Spider-Man was. So didn't he tell him oh, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but Max didn't know who Peter Parker was? He just knew the name.
I got another
That's a good
question.
point.
I got another question too, because I vaguely remember Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's probably the only Spider-Man I almost kind of fell asleep at. But was Electro's power, was he able to look at electronic data too, or was it just electricity? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was just electricity.
Okay.
So he could grab like a cable and he could draw energy from it. So that kind of explained why he got the arc reactor and he got this tremendous power in this movie. But yeah, to your point, Porfirio, okay, in this movie, like he does find out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I get that. But in Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I did watch today, he never knew that. So for that reason, he shouldn't have emerged in this universe, right? Because you know, I'm just going by this logic, right? It's only people who know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, right? People like Otto Octavius and other Peter Parkers themselves, right? So I don't know if anyone has an explanation. I'd love to hear it, but right now I think it's a plot hole.
Magic. It's magic, dude.
It's magic.
Can't explain magic.
Who knows?
I don't know. I think Porfirio is onto something here. I think if I were you to believe anything, I'd believe that just Harry Osborn told him at some point Peter Parker Spider-Man, but never showed him who Peter Parker was, because remember at the end, like with the final scene with in No Way Home of Electro, he goes like, "Man, I thought you'd be black," you know, like he's never seen Peter's face.
Okay.
So that's my explanation of, like, you know, what happened.
Oh, I get.
He heard the name Peter Parker.
I get what you guys are driving at now. So he never saw Peter Parker's face. So that's why at the end of No Way Home, he's like, "Oh, I thought you would be black." But maybe he does know the name and he knows Peter Parker's Spider-Man because of conversations he's had with Harry Osborn, who he did team up with at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2. So, okay, well, it's far-fetched and not fully explained, but it's a possible explanation. So I guess good enough. Cool. And I'm not sure about Sandman, Flint Marko. Did he know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man?
Yes. Yeah. So Sandman knew, because I mean that was the whole reason like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was after Sandman. He was like saying like, "You killed my uncle," and that's why he went all turned black and got like venom powers and everything. And then towards the end, like he had that whole confrontation about like what actually happened that night, how he did kill Uncle Ben, but it was an accident.
Good call. There you go. I forgot that. And after watching Amazing Spider-Man 1 today, I can confirm that Kurt Connors also knew that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So cool. Got explanations for all. Not all totally satisfactory, but it can be explained in some way. Fair enough.
Okay, so I want to point out it's not so much a negative, but like, what do you guys think? Because Tom Holland has said in an interview that the original idea for No Way Home was to be like a Craven centered movie. Like what do you guys think of if it had turned out that way?
As in, like, no universes like colliding. It would have
I don't think
largely stayed smaller scale.
I don't think it would have been a multiverse storyline. I think it would have been like Spider-Man versus Craven.
Like,
I mean, it would have been a completely different movie.
Yeah.
Probably would have been much smaller. You know, probably would have been more in line, I think, with the two that we've seen. Like Far From Home and Homecoming, where it focuses on just Peter and his like one villain, maybe a side villain.
Okay.
I would have been down for that. I mean,
I'm actually glad that they sort of, in a sense, slowed things down and brought things sort of back to the roots of Spider-Man instead of moving forward with a new villain, because then at that point it becomes about the new villain and not Spider-Man.
Agreed. And yeah, we speculated on this, but we were really expecting to see Craven or Morbius or, you know, quite a bit of Venom and a lot of this sort of forward moving what's ahead with Sony type stuff, right? And that didn't happen. It was all looking back on past stuff. Really cool. We didn't even get like current trilogy villains like Mysterio. Well, there were Mysterio mentions, but Mysterio himself didn't show up. We didn't see Vulture or Scorpion.
I'll make the argument that Craven was in the movie, and
And
probably all
I
those
was gonna
villains are in the
say-
movie.
Ooh,
Because when the universe ripped open and we saw silhouettes of like a ton of characters,
mm-hmm.
there was one that looked dead on. Like there was one character that was holding a spear. I'm like, that's got to be Craven.
Good call.
Yeah.
Apparently
Oh, I
that's
missed
not
that.
the only one. I didn't see him.
No,
I
there's
read
a lot.
about him. Yeah. Did anyone else notice any others?
There was one big hulking guy who I'm guessing might be Rhino.
That was Rhino.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
There was also Scorpion.
Yep. Those are the three that
And-
were called out.
And then I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard there was also Black Cat.
Oh, really? I didn't hear about that one.
Like next to Craven's figure, it was Black Cat. But because like I said, I've watched this movie 3 times and I've been trying to make it out. I feel like I have to press pause and look at it, but I can't tell. It's very like
Pause the screen.
Well, that kind of happened to us all.
I know.
At the wrong times.
Yeah, so when we were watching all together the first time, like 2/3 of the way in, like pretty much the scene where where like Andrew and Toby are finally on screen and they're in Ned's house, the movie just pauses, almost like you're watching a YouTube video and the internet cuts out and it needs to buffer or something like that.
Yeah.
And what really got me, I thought was hilarious, was like right as it happened, someone just shouts, "I'm gonna throw some dirt in your eye."
Yeah. Technical difficulties. It happened
Yeah.
like what, 3 or 4 times?
Yeah, like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, really annoying.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it finally went away. And the last, I don't know, half an hour or so was all smooth sailing.
Yeah, I remember people were like, I'm gonna get a refund. Like, you're totally killing my moment here.
Yeah.
Oh, this was at the Daly City Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Froze up a few times. It was
Oh, that's
not
awful. That happened
Yeah.
to me during the Spider-Verse movie
good.
when
That's-
Miles was painting that mural. It just kept stopping. Then they replayed it from the beginning, and then it stopped again.
Dang.
And then there was a good like 15 minutes we were waiting.
Oh wow.
Huh. Also weirdly in a Spider-Man movie. With all the
Yeah.
multiverse.
Yeah. Hey, so before we get off of the negatives, I was sort of scanning Rotten Tomatoes and just getting a feel for the critical response. Critical response has been very positive. A lot of glowing reviews. It seems like the only negative reviews are basically to the effect of the movie being too fan servicey and like it's just catering to the fans and it's just chock full of these fan service moments and it sort of distracts from everything really. What do you guys think about that? Is there too much fan service in this movie? Should they have done anything differently? What do you think about that?
I don't think there was too much fan service. I mean, I think it was just enough. But then you also have to consider they rebooted Spider-Man so many times. Like, what would they be able to do different that's going to blow all the other Spider-Man movies out of the water? Like, this had to be it.
Yeah.
Wait, no, go ahead, Porfirio.
Okay.
Yeah, go
I think
first.
I think just like what I was saying, like I think there was just a I think there's just a lot of people expecting all this fan service. Like I said, like for me, I enjoyed it the second time around just because the first time I was just like looking out for like, is Daredevil coming back? When are Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield going to show up? Like, are they going to show up? I think I was just too like anxious and looking forward to those like Easter egg small moments that I couldn't really enjoy the movie. So the second time around, I just enjoyed it for how it was. And yeah, so I don't think like the fan service moments was annoying. I just think like the whole like anticipation and looking out for the Easter eggs was annoying.
I think that's the thing too. Like going back to all of the reboots of Spider-Man, if you think about it, like there's so many different, like there's like shards of Spider-Man, right? And it's just like this movie helps sort of tie everything together and give an explanation as to like why they all exist. And so it's really sort of meta, right? That they're doing that, and it's again another way of not fixing the mistake, but explaining what had happened in the past so it makes sense today. and that's the thing too, like the dialogue. Like I think had the dialogue been incredibly campy, then yes, fan service would have definitely had shined through. But I feel like they did just enough, and the dialogue, they did it just right where it wasn't too over the top and it made sense to the story.
Yeah, like I'd agree that like most of the characters that show up from other movies all like they all have their own kind of motivation and they all kind of like help kind of service the greater story and the greater arc of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Like it really feels like the characters have really been popped out of the movie and they're picking up right where they left off in a sense. And especially with the two other Spider-Man, and they kind of help to kind of bring together the arc as well as like have their own like kind of moments that feel like their own, such as like Andrew Garfield saving MJ, like we've seen, or Tobey Maguire being kind of the wisest of the three and knowing to stop Tom from killing Green Goblin, and it all feels like it fits. But I guess one thing I guess that criticism does um, kind of speak to, which something I thought of, like this is probably more nitpicky territory. It's not something that like totally bothered me, but I will say that like I think there's so many characters, there's so much like fan service, there's so many like big beats as well as big action set pieces that they do that there's kind of a lot of conveniences in the story. The way we talked about Doctor Strange's spell and the way they kind of have to quickly get that going and they can't really explain too much of it so they can keep the story moving.
Yep.
The way the way they kind of do, I think Sandman's kind of character, how he's kind of just whatever the story needs him to be at that moment. He first helps Peter, but then, when all hell breaks loose, he just decides that he wants to be with the bad guys and fight Spider-Man. I think that and of course Ned being able to do the Doctor Strange portal thing, like just kind of casually saying, "Oh yeah, I think I have magic" at one point in the story, and then being able to make the portal with the magic ring, whereas it took Doctor Strange, years of study and practice. And like there's probably a few other things I'm kind of missing. But like things that you kind of watch and you're like, that's kind of convenient. But it's almost more of to help the pacing of the story. Like it kind of has to be that way in order to kind of cram this much into the movie and have big action set pieces,
I feel like all those details are going to be explained in the next movie, which will make more sense as to why it was in there.
You're saying Ned's going to be in the next Doctor Strange movie? Is that what you're calling right now?
You never know.
Anything's possible at this point.
I mean, if Wong is now the new Sorcerer Supreme, I mean, anything's possible.
There you go.
Or is Ned going to be the Hobgoblin?
Ooh. Well, he did say he wasn't gonna, try to kill Peter.
Right.
Yeah.
Did make that vow.
Yeah.
But now they're not friends anymore. So I guess maybe it's true.
In the not fully explained but referenced in a small way category, Ned did mention to Doctor Strange early in the movie that something about sometimes he gets these like weird feelings, like tinglings or something like that, right? You guys remember that?
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's saying that maybe he has some sort of I don't know,
He did say
the
that he
magical
did.
power in
He
him.
mentioned his nana was like, yeah, there's magic in our family.
See, there you go. Doesn't fully explain things, but it's an attempt. So better than nothing.
He learned how to make a portal faster than Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Okay, so what else? Oh, just real quick before we get off of the fan service stuff, I'm in agreement that there wasn't too much fan service, and yeah, like this is where the MCU shines. I think Kevin Feige has this down to a science. He knows the right buttons to push. He knows not to do too much. And yeah, like with Avengers Endgame, I feel like Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home are similar in a few ways. Certainly that they're both chock full of a lot of fan service moments. And you could argue with both movies that maybe there is too much. But I just gotta say, both movies do it so artfully, so thoughtfully. You just can't really complain.
I'm curious,
And
is
you
fan
know,
service generally a negative thing? I've always sort of taken that as a negative thing. Is that sort of just widely known that it's negative? Because I feel like there's fan service that could be done well, and there's fan service that could be done not so well.
yeah,
And in a movie where you have three Spider-Man, like right off the bat, like there's fan service there. Are they going to do
yeah,
it well, or are they not going to do it well? You know what I mean?
yeah. I think the term has kind of become a negative connotation, but I'm with you, Rainier. Like, I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. It can be done well. It can be done not well. So here, I think it was done well. And I think, you have a movie with 3 different Spider-Mans in it. You could really go overboard. But guess what? They didn't introduce Toby and Andrew until like past the halfway point, right? And the way they introduced them was just so spot on, right? They just nailed it. They nailed the landing, right? So I mean, I can't complain about it. It's just done so well. And I would also say that the main problem when you do have fan service gone wrong is that it's a distraction. It takes you away from the main theme of the movie. And I don't think that happened at all here, right? The main theme of Tom Holland's Peter Parker realizing that that responsibility is important, not only for himself but for others, and that theme is never kind of taken away from, right? All these crazy bonkers moments never really deter from the main story that we're experiencing, right? So kudos, props to this movie. I think it was just done so well. And speaking of which, yeah, I know, just more kudos and props. We haven't talked about the cast a whole lot. We alluded to it some, but I think the acting performances are just really great across the board here. There are a lot of actors in this movie, a lot of dialogue, and a lot of the acting, like there wasn't a lot of screen time, like other than like Tom Holland. These actors were kind of fighting for screen time, and there are just so many great moments, and just I think across the board the performances were great. Like Zendaya was great, Jacob Batalon was great. I mean, just such great acting across the board. Tom Watts, he doesn't get a whole lot of props. He's the director of all 3 Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. Did a good job with Homecoming, did a good job with Far From Home, and a fucking grand slam with No Way Home. I mean, he killed it. What a great performance, what a great execution as a director. And certainly I definitely want to call this out. Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal producing this movie, they really pulled it together. Kevin Feige, he always gets mega props. He did it again, right? He did it again. The grandmaster of the MCU. he's got this, that's a superpower, right? Making this connected universe stay relevant and interesting. He did it. But maybe more importantly, Amy Pascal and just Sony in general. I wanted to call out Sony because they've kind of been under fire over the years, right? Like they ruined Spider-Man. They should just give up the rights, you know, sell to Disney. You're ruining this for everyone, right? A huge turnaround here, right? Not only did they play well with Disney here, but they brought huge value, right? They brought back all these past Spider-Man characters. And I have heard that Amy Pascal herself is really responsible for assembling this cast. So apparently she's really good about like networking. Like she made the calls, she got the people on the phone, and maybe people she hasn't talked to for a long time, got them on the phone, pitched them, got them in the movie. You know, I think there's a lot to be said to that, right? Because we're all excited about like this amazing cast that has been assembled, and from what I hear, Amy Pascal is hugely responsible for that. So huge props. I know, especially recent times, there was that contract dispute. Like there was a moment that we were all freaking out that Spider-Man would get pulled from the MCU, right? And a lot of people, myself included, was pointing the finger at Sony, right? We're like, Disney, you're all good. Kevin Feige, we love you. Fuck Sony. Like that was the sentiment, right? Fuck Sony. They're ruining it for everyone. Why are you doing this to us, right? But mega props to Sony. All this stuff is great. I mean, we don't have to talk about the Into the Spider-Verse stuff. That's like awesome. I can't wait for the next one. But big turnaround for Sony. Love what they're doing there. And you know, on top of the huge enjoyment of this movie, I feel really good about the future of live action Spider-Man. You know, there was a lot of uncertainty pretty recently. Is the MCU gonna lose Spider-Man? Is Disney just kind of continually have to do this like mercenary style renting of the character and have it be really messy? It seems like they have a really good relationship now. So I feel really good about the future of Spider-Man in the movies.
A good time to be a Spider-Man fan.
Hell yeah. Amen to that.
I have a lot of questions though.
Let's go. Yeah.
Like, what's the
Go.
future of Spider-Man look like? Because like
Perfect timing. Yeah. Go.
the question here is like, they confirm that Oscorp doesn't exist in the MCU, and Oscorp, you know, that's a big part of like Spider-Man, right? Now the question is Oscorp going to eventually pop up somewhere in the MCU? He just hasn't met Harry Osborn. Same with Doc Ock. Like, does he exist in the MCU? We just haven't met him yet, like the MCU version of Doc Ock, or do they just not exist at all?
All great questions. Did you have a thought, Christian?
I guess like my guess is that this is probably the the big okay, here it is. Here's Doc Ock and Norman Osborn. And then this is probably all I think they're going to do with it in the MCU. I think of course anything's possible. Like I shouldn't say, "Oh, that's never going to happen." Because, well, I didn't think a movie like this was going to happen, a few
Yeah.
years ago. I didn't think this was possible, and it was just a pipe dream of fans. But I think by having them here and having them in their kind of a quote unquote original forms, this is kind of their way of kind of giving the fans what they want, so they can use Spider-Man in other ways in the future. I think the Tom Holland movies are always trying to keep Spider-Man different. They're always trying to have Peter in very different situations that we haven't seen him before. And so I think in the next, even though we're getting to the classic suit and the Spider-Man we kind of really know, I think they're going to keep trying to keeps Spider-Man different from what we've seen on screen in particular. That's my guess.
It is interesting that the end of the movie, it almost felt like two things. Like it was a grand send off to all of the past cast that had played in the Spider-Man films, but it was also really a big reset button for Spider-Man because now no one knows Peter is Spidey. He no longer has access to Stark's wealth, which, I mean, there's a whole big thing with me on that as well. Like, I feel like MCU Spider-Man has been riding the wave of the Avengers for far too long, and he's been standing on the shoulder of Tony Stark for too long. And I think a lot of people have issue with that. And the reason being is because like Spider-Man is not standing on his own. He's standing on the shoulders of others. And by the end of this movie, it's like they're going away with all of that. Spider-Man is now, in a crappy apartment. He sewed together his own suit, like he's self-reliant and he's on his own. So I'm curious, are they going to continue with that, or is this just a farewell and we'll leave it up to you to determine what Spider-Man's going to be in the future,
Yeah, definitely a big question mark. Like they're leaving a lot open here, right? Could be a total reboot. And
or is
yeah.
this like we're not going to see Peter Parker for a while, and hey, this is an opportunity for Miles Morales to take the scene, and we can tell more of that story. Yeah, lots of possibilities.
Yeah,
Anything could happen.
Yeah, they're leaving the door open to any of that stuff, really. Although it has to be said that a follow-up movie has already been announced, right? Porfirio, you messaged me about that recently.
Yeah.
Is it called Is it called Finally Going Home?
I mean, I think after the pre-sales numbers are in, they're like, okay, let's get to work on this next movie because we got a whale here. Yeah. So I think any thoughts of maybe pausing the Tom Holland Spider-Man are probably out the window now. I think they want to get this continuation going, and I think we'll see it, in the near future, and it probably will be something of a reboot, right? It sure feels like it. It's Peter. It's a totally different story. Nobody knows Peter Parker. He's alone in a dingy apartment with a sewn together suit, and it could be a lot more like the Spider-Man we know and love from the comics, right? So yeah, we'll see.
I think it makes more sense to just like expand the Spider-Man universe without talking about Spider-Man Peter Parker himself. I mean, like, they're still gonna make more Morbius and Craven and Venom 3. But like I think like for the MCU itself, I think it just makes more sense to like introduce new characters like Miles Morales, Silk, Spider-Woman, and yeah, like take a break from Peter Parker, but expand on Spider-Man stories, I think is what they should do now.
Yeah, good call. And what they're hinting at the end of No Way Home with this, rebooted Spider-Man is kind of what I think a lot of fans have been hoping for, and that's Tom Holland sort of distancing himself from the MCU. Like for so long, he's been like Iron Man's sidekick, or like there's Captain America cameo appearances and Doctor Strange showing up and whatever, right? I feel like now is a good opportunity for him to just be the guy, right? And that's kind of exciting, right? We've all had some gripes about like, oh, this is cool, but it's just too much MCU. It's like too connected. Like, can't Spider-Man have his like full-on own solo story? So maybe that's where we're headed, and that could be pretty cool.
Although I definitely agree, but I think I think if I was going to see him crossover with one more MCU character, it would be the Human Torch. I think they're supposed to be like good friends in the comics. We're finally getting a Fantastic Four movie, and like I think it'd be really cool to see them two finally interact on screen.
Technically, Steve Evans, uh,
Or Chris
Oh,
Evans.
or Chris Evans.
Chris Evans should reprise his role as the Human Torch now that he's no longer Cap. And
That's the multiverse. Have Chris Evans, Human Torch, meet Chris Evans, Captain America.
Exactly. I had that thought in my head like today about this whole multiverse thing. They could potentially dip into any past Marvel movie, Disney owned or not, right? And have it just be explained by the multiverse. So endless possibilities.
Okay, I got a question for you guys because I know we've all been. I think we all unanimously agree that we want to see Miles Morales. Who would you guys like to see cast as Miles Morales?
Ooh.
Good question.
Ooh, I don't know. Off the
I'll
top of
tell
my
you who-
head, that is a
I'll
good
tell-
question.
I'll tell you who I'd like to
Yeah.
see. I'd actually like to see
Ooh.
Shamik Moore actually play him, the guy that plays the voice. Like, I think he could pull it off.
Oh yeah,
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
that's a
good
good
actor.
pick.
Yeah,
he,
yeah.
he would be good. Now, the one reservation there is that I feel like the live action Miles has to be pretty damn young. We talked about this a little before, but it would make sense to have Peter Parker be something of a mentor to Miles. And Tom Holland is pretty young himself, and he's definitely young looking. So you might need a really young Miles. And Shamik Moore is great, but he's already a little bit older now. So yeah.
I mean, if they can make Hank Pym look like a young guy, I mean, come on.
Oh, hey, there's the de-aging, can do anything, right? Yeah.
Anything.
But yeah, Shamik Moore would be cool. That'd be awesome if he would be the voice actor Miles and the live action Miles.
Dude, how cool would that be?
That'd be hella dope. Yeah. Yeah. But as long as it works within the story they tell, it could be awesome. More likely though, it might be like what I'm saying, someone younger and possibly like a total unknown. Maybe someone like Tom Holland was when he was first cast as Peter Parker, completely not a household name. So we'll see. I like what you're thinking though, Rainier. I'm so chomping at the bit to get Miles Morales in the MCU. Can't wait. I mean, it's just a matter of time, right? So I really can't wait to see that. Okay, so I think we can get to ratings. Yeah. So out of 5, what would you rate Spider-Man No Way Home? Let's see. How about we start with Porfirio? What would you rate this movie?
Yeah, easily 5 out of 5. Like, it was just really good. Yeah, like hardly anything wrong with it in my opinion. It's just so enjoyable. I've seen it 3 times in less than a week. So yeah, 5 out of 5.
Good call. Now, you're the only one of us who's seen it 3 times at this point. That third viewing, did you get a sense of like, I don't know, fatigue or like, okay,
Fatigue.
like you get, I mean, or was it still super like exciting watching it that third time?
Yeah, it was still, I think, still super exciting. I think, because believe it or not, people still hadn't seen it by then. So like seeing like people's reactions when like Toby and Andrew showed up, I think that was really still cute and adorable. And like how we've been saying, there's just like a little cameos and little Easter eggs that you just don't notice the first time around. That's cool to catch them and be like, oh, like the writers of this movie, they're clever, for like sticking to like the original comics content, or a cool like little throwback move to the old Spider-Man movie. So it was still a lot of fun.
Right on. Yeah, I feel similarly. Like on my second viewing with you guys, that electricity was still there. I was just like really looking forward to seeing it again. And guess what? I am going to see it a third time this weekend. And you know what? I'm stoked to see it again. Like, you know, like Cap says, I can do this all day. All right. Okay. How about Rainier? What would you give this movie?
I mean, any movie that up levels the previous movies that had come up before it is a winner in my book. So this gets 5 whips out of 5.
5 thwips. I like that. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. How about you, Christian? What would you rate No Way Home?
Yeah, this movie definitely is like quite a ride of a movie. I think it's paced pretty well. There's a lot of really great action set pieces. Probably some of the best like Spider-Man action we've seen. Um, Peter's a great arc. There's a lot of great character moments, a lot of big hype moments, and the movie's just like a whole lot of fun all around. It's like, I guess pun intended, it's the ultimate Spider-Man movie. And I think growing up, of course, growing up with the character, seeing all the movies beforehand, it's just hard not to smile and have just like a sense of glee when watching this movie, seeing your favorite characters come back, seeing the banter between the bad guys or with the Spider-Men themselves. And so, like, yeah, I think it's definitely a 5.
Wow. 5s across the board. And guess what, gentlemen? We're going all 5s because I'm also giving this movie 5 out of 5. You know, I'm a notorious stickler, and I got to give it up. I got to give it up. This one is an all-timer. Like, I mentioned this before, but this movie is really why we go to the movies. It's just everything. You get it all with this movie. You really get it all. Um, yeah, we talked about the fan service a little. That was the one thing that maybe could have taken away a bit here. Certainly did not for me. And you know what? That Thursday night viewing I went to, it was myself, my friend, and his girlfriend. And me and my friend are like huge Spider-Man fans, but his girlfriend was more of a casual fan, right? And she certainly didn't get a lot of the fan service references. She loved the movie also, right? So I think that speaks to how well the movie works. Fan service or not, it's just a great fun ride. And yeah, I really cannot say enough. I absolutely love this movie. It works on so many levels. And yeah, there's replayability here. It's a movie you want to watch over and over. It's a movie, like we've been saying, that makes you want to watch other Spider-Man movies. It makes you want to watch other MCU movies, any other Marvel movies in general, any superhero movies in general. It just makes you feel good to be a comic nerd. I don't know. There's just so much here. And yeah, I can't say enough, but yeah, I was so happy. I was so happy here. Yeah, we talked about the anticipation, right? Getting the tickets, and there's already that excitement level. And to be honest, an expectation level, right? We've talked about before how expectation can kind of, I don't want to say ruin, but diminish your experience. If you're expecting too much, then maybe you can get disappointed. But this movie did not disappoint at all, at all. Last a couple tidbits. I talked about film snobs at the Alamo Draft House. This movie even catered to film snobs a little bit. There is a Boogie Nights reference and a Pulp Fiction reference in this movie. Just real quick, there's that scene where Peter is awaiting his college acceptance letters, and Aunt May is like rushing into the apartment with the letter. That is a direct callback to a scene in Boogie Nights, in reference to like cocaine use. But it's very strange callback, but it is. And then the Pulp Fiction reference, pretty funny. Early in the movie, MJ is like, she's kind of peeved that Doctor Strange is being like kind of kind of mean to them, like barking orders at them, and she's kind of like, please would be nice, right? That is a total Pulp Fiction reference when Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta have to clean up the bloody mess that they made in the movie. So crazy, like with all the bonkers stuff going on in this movie, they somehow added Pulp Fiction and Boogie Nights references also. So truly, this movie had it all. Absolutely 5 for 5, and awesome to hear that we all loved it. 5s across the board, and yeah, feeling good here, man. We're some happy comic geeks right now for sure. And with that, we can wrap up the episode. This is farewell from Rainier, Christian, Porfirio, and Henry.